Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Corporate Insights webinar on our recent user experience report about patient sentiments on prescription transfer and refill journeys. My name is Margaret and I'm an analyst on the healthcare team here at CI. I've been with CI for almost 4 years now, conducting research to help our clients better understand the competitive landscape and empower them with insights they need to help develop best-in-class digital experiences for their customers. I'm so excited that you could all join me today as I discuss our findings from this study. I already see a question in the Q&A box. There will be a Q&A portion at the end of this webinar, so feel free to pop any questions you have in the chat and I'll get to them at the end. And yes, you will all also receive a copy of the recording and the slides from this presentation after we wrap up. So I'm going to begin by giving a brief introduction to our services and the methodology that we use for this kind of research. Then I'm first going to walk through the prescription refill journey, then the prescription transfer journey. And for both of those, I'll be sharing insights from our user interviews, as well as highlighting some standout digital experiences from across our pharmacy monitor coverage set. So before we dive into our study, I'm just going to quickly introduce Corporate Insight for any of you who are unfamiliar with our work. Since our founding in 1992, we've specialized in combining customer insights with industry expertise to help our clients develop best-in-class customer experiences. We analyze the user experiences at over 200 institutions in financial services, insurance, and healthcare. And our comprehensive research lets us deliver actionable insights that help you make data-driven decisions. We can show you what it's like to be your customers and your competitors' customers to help you refine your experience and gain a real competitive advantage. Here's a quick breakdown of the key services that we provide. Our pharmacy monitor product lands in this first category. So that's going to be the report that we're walking through today. That's our monitor research, which offers survey-backed analysis of the full prospect and client experience and provides actionable intelligence that can drive really impactful improvements and a competitive advantage. We also provide our experience benchmarks, which are comprehensive annual studies that give more of a quantitative scorecard highlighting critical improvement opportunities and strategic recommendations. And then these final three are all more on the side of our custom consulting services, including our in-house UX lab and our quantitative research team. They can provide custom research for our clients, but they also back our ongoing research services, including the study we're going to look at today. So we found across our research that users are increasingly looking to complete more tasks digitally and from their phones, especially pharmacy-related actions like refilling and transferring prescriptions. We know that customers strongly prefer to complete these actions online and report high satisfaction compared to non-digital methods. In this latest analysis in the online pharmacy space, we find that intelligent prescription transfer and refill processes represent a really strategic opportunity to digitally transform pharmacy services, making for better patient outcomes, stronger patient-provider relationships, and just streamlined operations. So in this study, we look to illuminate patient sentiments on these two key digital journeys, and then to supplement the user experience research. We also included several standout examples of these processes from firms in our pharmacy monitor coverage. So for this study, analysts on our team conducted 5 45-minute user interviews. The interviewees are all active customers at Capsule Pharmacy, Acme Markets Pharmacy, Express Scripts, Nimble RX, and Walgreens. And we had even distributions of age, gender, and race. They had all both refilled and transferred a prescription online within the last 6 months. And in each of these interviews, we just discussed their experiences with their digital prescription refills and transfers, their expectations, and any preferences or pain points that they may have encountered during those processes. All right, so let's start by walking through the prescription transfer journey and some user sentiments about this process. Primarily, users found it much easier to transfer and refill their medications online compared to other non-digital methods. All of the participants in this study have refilled prescriptions both online and through non-digital methods like phone calls. And they appreciated that online processes tended to be faster and simpler compared to those non-digital methods, which usually involved making multiple phone calls to the pharmacy and the prescriber and waiting on hold. So due to the ease of the online journey, participants reported having no major pain points that they identified or areas for improvement. Interviewees all found it notably easier to transfer prescription online than to do it over the phone. We're going to call out some exact quotes from our interviews to highlight what patients shared in these sessions, so you'll see those with the blue outlines across these slides. Interviewees were aware of 3 ways that they could transfer a prescription from one pharmacy to another. The first being just by asking their prescriber to change the pharmacy on the script in person or through a phone call during a follow-up appointment. Secondly, by calling both their previous and new pharmacies to inform them of the changes. Or third, by transferring it online via their pharmacy's online portal. The interviewees collectively agreed that an online transfer was their most convenient and ideal method they'd experienced, again, mainly because they just didn't want to wait and speak with customer service. Their reasons for transferring prescriptions also fell into 3 general categories. Firstly, there were logistical reasons like moving to a new state and thus needing prescriptions at a new pharmacy, or even moving locations within the same city and wanting prescriptions somewhere more convenient. Secondly, were other personal preferences. Patients may want to use services from a pharmacy that had been out of network with a previous insurer, but then was in network with a new one. Sometimes they also don't have a say in which pharmacy their doctor immediately sends a medication to, so they could transfer it afterwards to their preferred location. And thirdly, negative past experience with the pharmacy. One respondent in particular had had a negative in-person experience that involved super long lines, poor customer service, and then a wait of 4 to 5 days to get the refill, which prompted their desire to switch pharmacies and specifically to seek one out that offered mail delivery services. And online transfer journeys tend to be quite efficient. Interviewees noted that Capsule and Express Scripts, for example, offer fully online processes for transferring prescriptions. In this screenshot to the right, you can see the Capsule transfer process, which has this really engaging and simple, streamlined design. And they noted that processes at these firms were quick and required only a few inputs and steps. And they also didn't require the customer to reach out to their doctor or the previous pharmacy because both Capsule and Express Scripts handled the entire transfer process after form submission. Participants all expressed really high satisfaction with these online transfer forms, with some of the strengths they called out, including minimal time needed to complete the form, the simplicity of the process when it required just a few steps and not too many inputs, and especially the pharmacy's handling of the back-end process, which did not require the patient to get involved beyond the initial digital journey of filling out the form. Again, the user sentiments here were all quite positive, and they didn't identify any wishes, needs, or areas for improvement in this digital journey. On the other hand, non-digital transfer experiences felt frustrating and inconvenient across the board. Several participants had previously needed to transfer prescriptions through non-digital methods. For example, if their pharmacy didn't have the option to transfer a prescription online, which is sometimes the case for smaller local pharmacies, or the pharmacy offering an online process, but still requiring the prescriber's input to complete the process, which means patients must still reach out to inform their prescriber. Well, all the interviewees shared that they were ultimately able to successfully transfer their prescriptions, They describe these experiences using words like tedious, inconvenient, frustrating. They expressed annoyance at back and forth with their doctor and the pharmacy, longer delays, and frustration at waiting for their insurance to be verified. So now I'm going to have a poll question that I encourage everyone to answer, and that should appear now. So which do you think users found more difficult, transferring their prescriptions or transferring other types of services like financial services or other insurance? I'll leave this question up for about a minute to give you a chance to answer. Here are results. It looks like 35.3% of you said transferring prescriptions, 47% of you said transferring non-prescription services, and 17.5% said it did not express a significant difference. Let's see. So yeah, we were curious to see whether participants felt that the process of transferring prescriptions was analogous to transfer processes outside of the healthcare or the pharmacy space, like switching insurers, bank accounts, financial services, or utility services. And overall, interviewees did feel that their prescription transfer experiences were easier than other processes of switching services outside of healthcare, and they identified some key differences. Their positive feelings were mainly because their experience of transferring other services did tend to involve those pain points like multiple phone calls, waiting on hold, interactions with customer service, or even sometimes needing to go in person to a location to complete the process. For example, one interviewee said that to close down a bank account and transfer to a different bank, they had to actually go in person to that bank location in order to close it, which they found to be much less convenient. Okay, so now let's walk through the prescription refill process. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box for me to address at the end. And so before we get into this section, I have another poll question for everyone, and that is, which platform do you think users preferred for refilling their prescriptions? Do you think they preferred mobile apps, desktop sites, or did not express a difference between the two? So it looks like, wow, different results here. Majority of you said mobile apps, and then 10% of you said desktop sites. So yes, we did find that interviewees preferred mobile apps over desktop sites for refilling their prescriptions, but they definitely still weighed the pros and cons for both methods. Among the 5 interviewees, 3 of them preferred to refill their medications strictly using their pharmacy's mobile app, 1 preferred the website, and 1 was divided between the 2. They acknowledged some pros for using a desktop computer, like just the wider full screen is easier to visually, potential additional access to features that might be missing on the mobile app. An interviewee also mentioned that they would either use desktop or mobile depending on where they were throughout the day. If they were an office worker who tries to avoid using their phone at work, for example, they said it was easier to refill on desktop, and then they use mobile outside of work. But overall, we noticed that convenience was a really key factor for users who chose to refill their prescriptions on a mobile app. We generally found that mobile app users enjoyed the flexibility offered by the option to refill their prescriptions while not at home. And they discussed some other notable advantages, including a preference to keep all of their pharmacy-related items like app content, communications via text message, any push notifications from their pharmacy just consolidated within their single device, or simply just not feeling the need to use the website when the mobile app was more readily available. One respondent who uses Capsule was actually unaware that the pharmacy even had a desktop website and believed that the mobile app was the only option to access their account. Respondents also told us that they really liked the option to sign in using Face ID, whereas the login process can be longer on desktop sites, which require users to recall and manually enter their username and password. So again, overall, interviewees also reflected positively on their online refill experiences. They reported really high satisfaction with digital refill journeys and didn't have any major improvements or new features that they wanted to see. For many of them, again, the refill process simply consisted of logging into their account, clicking the refill button, and checking out. They collectively described the online refill journey with several keywords like quick, easy, convenient, straightforward, hands off. So within the digital experience, we found that pharmacies that we looked at do a good job clearly labeling refill buttons on customer accounts. They tend to provide these really prominent calls to action, often on like medication list type pages to indicate which prescriptions are available for refill. These buttons or links are usually labeled refill, but sometimes they also use language like add to cart, which represents kind of common language seen on other online shopping platforms that participants may be more familiar with on the day-to-day, which helps create a really consistent experience for users across multiple digital channels. You can see we pulled some examples here. Albertsons has those bright blue refill buttons that indicate the number available. And then Kaiser Permanente uses that add to order language with a really familiar shopping cart icon. For another example, you can see here in the screenshot from UHC that the page presents more clear calls to action to refill the prescription with just a few clicks. And it also promotes nearby pharmacies where the refill is available that patients might find convenient. While many firms list the number of refills available for each prescription pretty readily, Express Scripts, which you see in these two screenshots here, stands out by using the shaded pill, and you can see it in the top right corner of the first screenshot to indicate medications with remaining refills and the number of refills available. So the use of the icon and the text help draw the attention to each tile where you see those large green add to cart buttons that appear when applicable. And the checkout process at Express Scripts also let you choose a shipping method. They have free standard shipping, expedited shipping at a cost. And then on top of that, Express Scripts members can also pay for their prescriptions using PayPal, which we saw as a relatively rare feature that shows great flexibility in thoughtfully meeting user preferences and just streamlining that experience in a meaningful way, because users don't have to input their credit card information if they would rather not. Some pharmacies also offer the ability to refill prescriptions without signing in for another level of convenience. Here's an example we pulled from Kroger Pharmacy, which you can see in these screenshots allows you to check out as a guest, removing the need entirely to log into the account. And they also offer a really streamlined form for the guest refill process consisting of those 5 steps. You just have to enter a phone number, identify the pharmacy location, input the prescription number, and choose your pickup time. Customers also found pharmacies that also sell over-the-counter products really appealing. Our interviewees appreciated the option of ordering their over-the-counter products while refilling their prescription, especially several of them identified scenarios when they were feeling unwell. And for example, if they'd already gone to a doctor's office or an urgent care to get their prescription when they were feeling sick, they really valued the option to order items like cough drops or tissues in addition to their prescription and save themselves the extra trip or the extra mental load of remembering to pick those things up in store. They also liked the option to buy daily essentials like shampoo or toothpaste while getting their regular medications, just as a way to streamline their routine errands. You can see some examples here. Capsules app on the left includes that Essentials tab right in the bottom row navigation, which houses a really extensive OTC store organized into various categories based on customer needs. And then for each product, members can view a brief description and any notes from a pharmacist about usage. We definitely have identified this as a growing trend in the industry, and we're seeing a few more firms beginning to roll this out. For example, you see Express Scripts is highlighting this new feature, which is their integrated OTC shop, as did NimbleRx, indicating that this is a trend we're seeing in the space to create that unified shopping experience. On the CenterWell site you see in these screenshots, the Shop Products tab is actually in the main menu, which leads to the OTC store. It includes a search bar, and it displays products that the user has purchased before, and then intelligently predicts featured products that they might be interested in buying based on their medications and their purchase history. For each product, CenterWell also then includes usage directions and specifications, as well as another list of related items, again, creating cross-promotion and a seamless online shopping experience. And so we found through our conversations with the interviewees that they were well-versed in refilling their prescriptions through phone calls, but found this option to be relatively inconvenient. The most common reason for refilling prescriptions through non-digital methods was if their pharmacy was more of like a local brick and mortar pharmacy that didn't offer them an advanced online experience. One respondent also mentioned that their prescription was a controlled substance, and when there were shortage issues happening, their pharmacy required them to call to obtain a refill. Interestingly, interviewees also tended to associate refilling prescriptions through phone calls with in-person pickup, and they associated online refills with mail delivery services. Other interviewees strongly perceived phone calls to be really inconvenient, especially having experienced the ease of doing the process online. They described it as old school and just found it much more time-consuming. Another notable takeaway we gathered from our interviews is that participants noted the advantages and disadvantages of auto refill, but generally didn't prefer it. All of the participants were aware of the option to automatically refill their medications, and they did recognize some potential advantages, but none of them were super strong advocates for the feature. They recognized that it could be convenient if they wanted a more hands-off approach, and they saw that it could be helpful for maintaining a constant supply for medications that maybe they needed to take every single day. But they also identified numerous disadvantages, like needing to be available to receive a delivery, getting an overabundance of prescriptions, forgetting to turn it off for medications they no longer need, or forgetting to make changes in their mailing address and preferred payment method. Participants shared with us that they actually liked the more hands-on aspect of requesting refills themselves. The interviewees appreciated the ability to track medications and how much they were taking or using. This especially tends to be the case more for like topical creams and gels that don't necessarily have a set daily dosage, because patients may wish to like keep tabs on how many tubes they've used and kind of go at their own pace. Many interviewees also explained that requesting refills on their own was just kind of a force of habit. It was a part of their regular routine, and they were simply used to requesting a refill when they needed. This wasn't a task that they were seeking to change or offload necessarily. And lastly, some interviewees told us about negative experiences that they had had with the auto refill feature. Two of the interviewees shared that the auto refill feature would sometimes turn off by itself in the Walgreens app, which unfortunately led to participants missing scheduled supplies of medications as they were expecting the prescription to be refilled automatically, and then it wasn't. So they found peace of mind in manually requesting their own medications just to know that they were avoiding this kind of mishap. Although we know from these interviews that patient sentiment about auto refills is mixed at best, we saw that pharmacies promote auto refill really prominently on customer accounts. They tend to promote it on like medication list pages, again, with toggles to turn the feature on or off, or buttons to opt into the feature. We see an example here from Birdie RX, which takes it a step further by displaying this light box as soon as members log into the site. It displays the terms and conditions for auto refill, and concludes with a turn on auto refill button that then enrolls all future prescriptions into auto refill. We're also seeing firms proactively promote the feature within the checkout process for refills and for transfers to create higher visibility and integrate it with those initial touch points that members have with the digital experience. Here you can see an example from CVS where you can toggle on the auto refill setting for applicable prescriptions before continuing to the shopping cart. And lastly, we found that participants mostly identified differences rather than parallels between the process of paying for refills and paying for other common subscription services that they subscribe to on a regular cadence. Again, we were looking for interviewees to think about if they could identify other analogous digital experiences outside of the healthcare space. In interviews, we asked respondents whether they felt that the online refill process was comparable to paying for other subscription services like Netflix or Spotify, and other than a similarity between auto refills and monthly subscription services in which users must make a payment on a scheduled cadence, interviewees across the board felt that these two processes were quite different. First of all, they noted that subscription service costs are at a fixed monthly price, whereas their prescription costs vary month to month, depending on their insurance coverage sometimes or current spending status. They also perceive themselves as paying for subscription companies' services, but not necessarily buying into a pharmacy's services, but instead paying for their individual specific medications. With subscription services, users enter their card details when registering, and they said that they generally did not return to this section of their account on the website. To be honest, most of the interviewees couldn't actually recall on the spot when we asked them exactly how much they were paying for some of their typical monthly subscriptions like Amazon Prime, Spotify Premium, that kind of thing. Whereas with pharmacies, they may have to more frequently edit their account details if they move home or switch health insurance. And they were all generally more conscious about paying for their prescriptions as part of their ongoing expenses that flew under the radar much less. And they had a pretty good general awareness of the exact costs of each of their medications. So through this study, we honed in on some key implications for the digital experience. First, it's significant that all patients prefer digital processes, indicating a demand for these streamlined user experiences. Digital platforms can support seamless prescription management. Patients can be empowered to initiate transfers and refills within their day-to-day tasks without disruptions or time-consuming processes. And leading online journeys consistently outperformed alternative traditional methods, indicating the significance of strong digital experiences in patients' lives, and also the importance and the room for ongoing innovation in the space. And from our analysis of patient sentiment, we found that patients are really loyal to convenience and value the ability to handle these tasks efficiently. Phone calls were a major pain point across the board, with patients appreciating self-service options wherever possible. Within digital experiences, patients responded really strongly and positively to one-click digital journeys that minimize unnecessary steps and provide immediate confirmation responses within simple processes. Okay, so that brings me to the end of our content today. I see some questions trickling in, so I encourage you to add any further ones in here. First of all, yes, the slides and the recording of this webinar will be shared with you shortly after we conclude today. I see someone asking, did we recruit participants from specific pharmacies? We did not look for participants when we were recruiting who were at specific pharmacies. We cast a pretty wide net, and our recruitment was just based on whether people had conducted the refill and transfer journeys online and in person before. And then from there, we asked them about their specific pharmacies within the interviews. Someone asked, you found that patients had mixed feelings about auto refill, but pharmacies promote it. What's the disconnect, and how could pharmacies better position this feature to align with patient experiences? Yeah, so the disconnect seems to stem from pharmacies viewing auto refill as a convenience feature that drives adherence, which we know patients see some value in, but we found that patients also value the control and the tracking that comes from manual refills. We saw from our interviews they appreciated the option to monitor their medication, especially for like those topical treatments. So to better align with preferences, I think pharmacies can pay attention to offering like smart reminders that prompt patients to refill rather than automatically processing orders without any action from the patient, even if those reminders are automated, or providing more granular controls that offer flexibility, like allowing auto refill for maintenance medications, but keeping some of the other ones for manual refills to adhere to patient preferences. I know some of our recent research has covered features like intelligent reminders and notifications and account preferences. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely let us know. Here's a good question. Someone asked, your findings suggest patients are loyal to convenience rather than specific pharmacy brands. What implications does this have for customer retention strategies? And how might pharmacies create stickiness beyond just convenience? Yeah, so the fact that patients prioritize convenience over brand loyalty definitely presents both a challenge and an opportunity for pharmacies. On the one hand, it means that patients will switch if a competitor offers a more streamlined experience that they prefer is easier for them. But on the other hand, it suggests that pharmacies can win and retain customers by delivering the more convenient and streamlined experience. But this means that pharmacies can't rely as much on traditional brand loyalty tactics and really need to focus on making their experience so streamlined and so convenient that to switch pharmacies would actually be undesirable. We saw this with participants who appreciated those features like flexible payment methods, being able to pay through PayPal, medication history tracking, and those integrated OTC stores. I think pharmacies can also consider building deeper relationships through like personalized health insights, interaction warnings, tracking tools, and proactive reminders, those like smart reminders again, and just make themselves feel like an important part of the patient's health routine. Someone asked, can you elaborate on why patients found prescription transfers easier than transferring other services like banking and insurance? And I think the main reason for this one was just that patients really liked that the pharmacy could handle everything behind the scenes and it was more hands-off. They appreciated that they just kind of had to fill out that one form in the single step and that the pharmacy then coordinated the rest. They found any form of like back and forth in other processes to be really annoying, and they also really disliked long wait times and not being able to like take immediate action. And also, yeah, no one likes being on hold on the phone for a long time. I think that wraps us up for today. If you have any more questions, please feel free to contact any of us. We would be delighted to connect with you.